our State House studio in Montgomery, I'm Todd Stacy. Welcome to Capitol Journal. The 2023 legislative session is in the books. The House and Senate adjourned Sine Die earlier this evening after meeting one final day to finish last-minute business. The biggest news of the day came on the overtime income tax bill. We've talked a lot about this issue. House Bill 217 from House Democratic leader Anthony Daniels would remove the state's 5% income tax from overtime wages earned. It went through a few revisions, ultimately passing the legislature with a $25 million aggregate cap on how much the state could allow to be kept by workers. However, today, Governor Kay Ivey sent the bill back with an executive amendment removing that cap, meaning workers will be able to enjoy the full tax cut without limits. The amendment also put a sunset or expiration date so that lawmakers can study its effects before committing to make it permanent. That sunset is June of 2025. The House and Senate concurred with the governor's changes, and Daniels was a happy camper.
Right now you have now hiring signs from the southern tip of our state to the northern tip, eastern and western. And what they're saying is they cannot find the personnel to work. But allowing working Alabamians that want to work overtime and make it worth their while for them and their families is worth doing. And so a person that's working overtime will now be able to, starting January, be able to receive the 5% back that they're pre-tax from their employees to send to the state of Alabama. Now they will be able to get that. It's like a 5% per hour on overtime pay increase. And so what they bring home. And so this is a raise without the industry, the business having to give a raise. It's the state of Alabama giving that raise to the hard-working men and women in the state. What that amendment means to me, I appreciate the governor. And the governor saw the need to be able to remove the cap in order to provide an opportunity for working class people in the state of Alabama to have an opportunity to be able to make a decent living.
Also receiving final passage today was Senate Bill 301 from State Senator Jabba Wagoner, which would make holding a phone or tablet while driving illegal. Drivers could still use phones through hands-free devices and do one-time movements like make a call and hang up. And also an amendment was added late that provides that the distracting driving charge could not be the primary offense, meaning people couldn't get pulled over just for using a cell phone.
Ladies and gentlemen, we've worked on this amendment. What this amendment will do will change this to be a secondary violation for every stop that goes through. As the bill came through the Senate, it is only a secondary stop for if you hold the phone, but if you have any other projects in your hand, that would be a primary stop. This amendment would shift that language to where it becomes a secondary stop for all issues that you would have regarding electronic devices.
Also going to the governor's desk is a bill aimed at protecting first responders by making it a felony to knowingly expose police, paramedics, or other emergency personnel to a deadly narcotic resulting in injury or death. House Bill 230 was amended to narrow the scope to only the exposure of fentanyl and not the other narcotics.
Fentanyl's everywhere. You know, it's in my community, it's in your community, and we just need to make sure that when our first responders arrive to a scene that they are protected. And so right now, in our current law, we don't have any way to create protection for them. So we've, Representative Simpson in this bill is creating a way for there to be penalties for chemical endangerment of first responders. And for the purpose of this bill, it occurs when a person knowingly, recklessly, or intentionally causes or permits a first responder, a coroner, or a deputy coroner to be exposed to ingest, inhale, or have contact with a Schedule I controlled substance or chemical substance or a mixture thereof while performing his or her duties.
Here's a list of other notable bills that received final passage on the last day. Senate Bill 157 from State Senator Chris Elliott would allow law enforcement officers to arrest parolees if they observe violations. Senate Bill 103 from State Senator Arthur Orr would require the Ethics Commission to hand over any evidence that might exonerate someone under investigation. And House Bill 272 from State Representative Jenny Shaver would increase the penalties for being convicted of fleeing law enforcement. Specifically, the penalty would increase from a Class A misdemeanor to a Class C felony. There were also bills that didn't make it across the finish line on the last day. One was a controversial vaping bill that sought to restrict stores from selling those products to anyone under 21. House Bill 319 from State Representative Barbara Drummond passed the House easily, but ran into trouble in the Senate when vape store owners said the bill would put unfair regulations on their small businesses. And House Bill 389, known as the 988 bill, would add a 98-cent phone user fee to help fund crisis mental health services, which respond to 988 calls. Both bills were carried in the Senate by State Senator Garland Gudger.
And then we've had a lot of discussion in caucus back and forth on that, and being able to make sure that we have the correct bill that minimizes youth being able to get these products in their hands. Has been a decision not to pass the bill in haste at the last day because we're wanting to pass that, but making sure we have the correct bill. So we're going to be bringing that, and it will be one of the first bills that I bring up with Representative Barbara Drummond to make sure that it happens for next year. And the bill with the 988, I think, is crucial to the state of Alabama and the mental health that we have, that we're all dealing with the pandemic of mental health. From that, my goal is to be able to bring that back up, push that through the legislature, and making sure it's the right timing to do that. It looked like this year we had some momentum going, then it got stopped in both houses, and so our goal is to make sure that we come together in the House and in the Senate so that we can provide the best care that we can for these patients statewide.
Here are some other notable bills that died in the final days of session. Senate Bill 196 from State Senator Arthur Orr. This would have updated the state's open records law, often cited as the weakest in the country, to offer more transparency with government records by requiring agencies to respond more promptly to requests. House Bill 209 from State Representative Jamie Keel, known as the ballot harvesting bill. It would have made it a crime to handle another person's absentee ballot or ballot application. It has exceptions for assisting family members or those who are deaf or blind. And House Bill 43 from State Representative Peblin Warren would have required all public school students to either attend kindergarten or demonstrate the equivalent proficiency before entering the first grade. And finally, House Bill 298 from State Representative Chris Sells. This would require cell phone and tablet manufacturers to enable filters that keep children from accessing material harmful to minors. I need to note on this bill that the telecom industry says the bill's language is much broader than pornography and could even lead to PG movies being blocked by phones. In any case, that bill is dead. After adjournment tonight, House Speaker Nathaniel Ledbetter reflected on a long and action-packed session.
I think it's historic. I mean, if you look at the things we accomplished starting out the session, 2 priority bills, been fentanyl and adoption. We changed adoption the first time in 30 years. We've got fentanyl, the bill has been signed into law. If you bring it into Alabama, you're going to spend a long time in jail. I think that was significant. I mean, you look at all the accomplishments with the tax cuts, the largest tax cut in Alabama history, rebates to the people of Alabama, along with ARPA funds where we put more water and sewer in people's cities, and help with the health care. I mean, it's been a historic session, in my opinion, and it's the work of the body that's made that possible.
And the Speaker had a special treat today. He invited his personal friend and group Alabama lead singer Randy Owen to visit the House floor. He took to the mic to offer encouragement to lawmakers and even had a few tunes to offer.
I could have been one of those kids that got in a lot of trouble because it was out there waiting for me. But God was very good to me and let me have a great mom and dad, believing mom and dad, great grandparents. And so I was able to go on with my career. But the one thing I wanted to take for sure was that I got that diploma. That diploma is something that can never be taken away from me. And I want to encourage y'all once again, don't let these kids like myself that are poor, that don't have much, don't have really any support at home, so to speak, don't let them slide through the cracks. Make sure that they go ahead and get that degree, because once they get that degree, nobody can ever take it away from them. It's theirs. It's theirs forever. And so I encourage y'all, I don't know, I just think it's important that I say that because I am one of those kids. But look at me now. Look at me now. Thank y'all very much.
And that's what happened on the last day of the session. We'll be right back with tonight's guest.
You can watch past episodes of Capital Journal online at video.aptv.org. Capital Journal episodes are also available on APTV's free mobile app. You can also connect with Capital Journal and link to past episodes on Capital Journal's Facebook page. And you can listen to past episodes of Capital Journal when you're driving or on the go with Capital Journal podcasts. Keep up with what's happening with Capital Journal.
Joining me next is State Senator Sam Givhan from Huntsville. Senator, thanks for coming on the show.
Glad to be here.
Well, it's been my observation that this session you have been very busy working on multiple bills, but I really wanted to have you on the show because you don't do a whole lot of press conferences and things like that where you're sort of seeking media attention. But man, on the floor, you seem to be at the podium a lot. I wanted to start out with the judge bill that you came with this session, working on allocating more judgeships, circuit and district, where population growth is in Alabama. Walk me through your thinking behind this bill.
So from my experiences in Madison County, which is a quickly growing county, I knew that we needed more help locally. And of course I was hearing from people in other parts of the state. And it was obvious that the courts had decided or determined that the big needs were in Madison County, they were in the Autauga, Elmore, Chilton County circuit, and also in Baldwin County. Well, that was what I call my Band-Aid bill. That's what I was approaching. Let's get the three hottest fires, so to speak, put out in this regard. What I've been fighting for 5 years, and I so appreciate everybody working with me this year, the governor's office, signing off on it, and now being law. But what I've been fighting is Jefferson County has, according to the court system, has too many judges. Well, they don't want to lose any. And they were very protective. There was always a filibuster. It's not, right. And with Senator Smitherman, it's not a threatened filibuster. It's a real filibuster.
Yeah,
he's going to do it.
That's right.
He and Senator Singleton are extremely talented. They know how to do that. They're very gifted in that regard. And so I had that problem. And then of course I had the Senator Albritton and I tease each other a lot, but I mean, his job is to clamp down on the money. Okay, sure. He can't just go and say, yeah, sure, here's a few million here, a few million there.
This is all general fund.
And general fund, right? Next thing you know, you're talking about real money. So, he was always sort of clamping down, and so this year we were able to reach a situation. I don't know that everybody got exactly what they wanted, but we got some more accountability there too, because what became apparent in all this is that all the circuits don't report their cases the same way. And that's something that Senator Smitherman had been talking about for years, is the difference in how Jefferson County did it in their circuit versus other circuits. So we put some accountability measures in there for information to be provided to the legislature. And I think that will put us where we're talking about apples and apples in the future, because this thing's not over. I mean, we've put out all the fires that are out there right now, and I'll say the fires, I'm talking about the needs that are documented by the court system. We've handled all of those, but it's going to come back up. Now, we did a compromise. We have a judicial, for the viewers that don't know, previous law had a judicial reallocation commission that would look at the circuits and say, hey, y'all got too many judges. These circuits don't have enough judges, we're going to move one. Well, they never did it. They just talk about it. Mm-hmm. And they finally moved one from Jefferson County to Madison County this year. And that's been upheld by the Supreme Court. So Senator Smitherman, of course, concerned about other judges being reallocated. So we put a moratorium on that until 2027. And I think with what we've done, I think that's fine because we've taken care of those needs. And I would predict the next need is going to be Madison County when Judge Jim Smith, actually, who is a retired judge who's basically still working as a full-time judge for free. I think, eventually he is going to say, hey, love it, guys, but I've had enough, and I'm going to go home. And at that point in time, we'll need another judge in Madison County.
Well, it's a significant compromise and accomplishment considering, like you said, 5 years working on it. Switching gears to the overtime income tax. This was interesting today because, look, it did pass the legislature, but had a cap on it, $25 million, meaning if statewide everybody's tax cut added up to $25 million, I guess it would just stop, right? That was the cap, which I didn't really ever understand, but the governor sends back an amendment taking that cap away, but also shortening the sunset, and y'all passed it. I know you worked with Representative Daniels on this bill. This seems like a really big deal.
It is a big deal, and as far as I'm concerned, it's a big win. And why is it a big win? Because for a year and a half, the fiscal note didn't change, but for a year and a half, all the workers of this state who work overtime are not going to pay state income tax on that revenue, or their revenue, their earnings. And so I think that's a big deal. And what I'm hoping is that this will catch really get a load of steam behind it, and that we'll see even the federal government perhaps do this to where it's a relief nationwide. But I also think this is going to be something that we are looking at permanently in Alabama. This gives us an opportunity to go and find out how much money are we talking about. The fiscal office comes up with an estimate. Now we'll know how much is this going to cost us.
Almost like a pilot tax cut to say.
Exactly. And so I think that we'll have that opportunity to get the workforce to embrace it, to get business to embrace it, to get the forms together that are needed by the Alabama Department of Revenue to document this. I think everybody will be getting behind this big time. And this, because I got asked a lot of questions by the media about, hey, how's this going to be handled? And I'm like, we'll work it out. I'm chairman of the Joint Legislative Council, and I figured that'd be my first big task is to figure out how we're going to work this out.
Well, yeah, because I was talking with the governor's office, and they were saying, look, the Department of Revenue's looking at this legislation saying, how in the world are we going to administer a cap on an existing tax cut? So I think that was part of it. And you'll get to see, but I just think about it in terms of all the tax legislation we've talked about this session. You can start with the rebates, that got changed around a little bit. You can point to the grocery tax. I think this one might be maybe the most significant tax cut, considering it really affects working people.
I think it's very targeted. I think it's at a perfect time. We have, we've complained about so many things about the supply chain, and that's one of the reasons that we've had so much inflation is because of difficulties with the supply chain. This gives another incentive for the worker to, get there, because you reach a certain point where you're just tired. I mean, I don't work by I guess as a lawyer I do work by the hour, but it's a little different. As remembering the days of back when I was a blue-collar hourly worker, you do need those incentives there when you've already put in a long day, a long week. How much more does it get you to motivated to work? Sure. And so I think that's a opportunity for people to have some relief and to have that extra money to deal with the inflation that we're dealing with.
Well, you mentioned legislative council, and folks who watch the show regularly hear us reference this. Every now and again, it's a joint body that sort of administers policies that affect the legislature and the state house. You passed a significant bill this year, making some changes to how things work around here. It included the opportunity to start a conversation with RSA about building a new state house. That's pretty exciting, but also changing the dates of when the session starts. We'll get to that in a minute, but talk about the need for a new state house. I know sometimes it's not politically popular, but I don't think you find anybody in this building that doesn't say there is a need. Can you kind of go over y'all's conversations in getting that bill, written in the way that you think it'll work?
Sure. So this building was not designed to be the people's house. This was a transportation department building. The way that it's laid out, the the age, the condition. I mean, I don't know how many people are getting sick from working in this building. I mean, there's been I've seen mold with my own eyes. It's flooded several times. There are components of this building that they do not make parts for anymore, and we saw it exacerbate. And I hope we don't deal with another situation like with the pandemic, but we saw where it was really problematic for the public having access. I mean, and the idea of access was basically let the lobbyists have access. Well, the lobbyists are, most of them are citizens too, but just Joe Public wasn't allowed. And also, when we get into committee meetings, there are a lot of people that want to participate in the government, and they don't get paid. They come in here and they just volunteer, or just they have a personal interest in it because it affects them. Their ox is getting gored in something, and so they want to come and speak to their senators or House members, and they want to go to committee meetings, and they want to be heard at committee meetings if there's opportunity for a public hearing. And there are a lot of these rooms that you just can't get anybody else in there. I mean, it's beyond standing room only, and it limits who can come into the building. So I think there are a lot of problems with access of the public about this. When you talk about disabilities, golly, we've had a couple of senators that have been temporarily or at least one permanently in wheelchairs, and they have a very hard time navigating this place. It was not designed with the Americans with Disabilities Act because it preceded it by decades. And when you start looking at the money we're going to have to put in this building to just keep it up to, pace, which is still not going to be much. Yeah. You're talking about, throwing good money after bad.
Mm-hmm. So is it this lot behind here that we're talking about the potential new state house would go, or is it that's just a possibility?
We've got a little flexibility there because an amendment was made in the House. Representative Lipscomb had some different ideas about how we could do some things, and to keep that flexibility, we went with it on the amendment because I think it's going to be problematic on the lot that's adjacent to the existing state house and behind the Capitol building. That's a possibility, but I think it's more likely it would be across Ripley from the State House now, and where it have a separate presence, because the lot next to that would be adjacent to the Capitol building is not a very big footprint. And so that means you have to go higher. And I sit here and I think about it from an aesthetic standpoint. As you're riding up Ripley, you see the iconic Capitol building, and then all of a sudden you're going to have this like Louisiana State Capitol going up behind it.
Florida has the same thing. It doesn't look good. And
I don't see that being what the state of Alabama should have. So I think we need to have something that's very practical, but that does not detract from the current state Capitol building.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're excited about that. A lot of people are. And yes, I agree with you that access in this building is horrible. We hear about it from people all the time that they'd love to come participate and they just can't, or they get down here and are horrified by the fact they can't even find their senators and all that. Other part of that bill, and I think it's apropos that the last day of the session today, it's hot as the devil outside. But y'all have moved up in the calendar when the legislative session will begin, back to February instead of March, because that if you go all 105 days, you get into June, and we've been very lucky with weather this year, but usually those last few weeks of session are really hot, probably tough on the air conditioners and everything here. Talk about y'all's conversations in that piece of legislation.
So what I wanted to do was go the first Tuesday in February of every year, but I got shot down on that idea pretty quickly because empirically this is the way I've always figured it, right, is that the first year of the quadrennium, we start in March. You got new senators, new reps coming in, perhaps have a new governor, give them more time to get the budget together and to get acclimated. But we started getting, hit up on things real early, way before the session begins. And so it's very, I think it's, given that we're not, we're not in 1819 anymore, not 1919, and so the budgets can be put together more quickly. We have different transportation to get down here and to start the things off. And so the senators and representatives I've talked to have all been real pleased with the idea that we'll start on the first year of the quadrennium in February, just as we do the second and the third year. Now, I would just assume keep it that way all along, but that it's very clear why we've got this here now is that people want to be able to get out of here and go campaign for re-election.
So in election years, it starts the second week of?
Starts basically right after the Tuesday after the national championship game, which Alabamians tend to stay attuned to.
Right. So, so they want to be done because that's when you can start raising money. That's when you can go start campaigning. Well, look, I think it's a welcome change to the calendar. And, my colleague Mary Sell says a legislative session is not a spring sport. It's not a summer sport, surely. It's a winter sport, so that'll be good. Well, Senator, we're out of time, but thanks again for coming on the show, and congratulations on a successful session.
Thank you very much. Enjoyed it.
We'll be right back.
You can watch past episodes of Capitol Journal online anytime at Alabama Public Television's website, aptv.org. Click on the Online Video tab on the main page. You can also connect with Capitol Journal and link to past episodes on Capitol Journal's Facebook page.
That's our show for tonight. Thanks for watching. We'll be back Friday night at 7:30 for our Weekend Review episode, right here on Alabama Public Television. For our Capitol Journal team, I'm Todd Stacy. We'll see you next time.